What's going on to all my movie and video game fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, MovieFiles. Today we are discussing one of the largest media franchises that has been produced by Nintendo, which has given us some of the greatest video games of all time, which is also extended to other forms of media, such as television series, comic books. They have theme park attractions. There's also a live action film that came out in the 90s that we will not be discussing today, but what we will be talking about is the new Super Mario Brothers animated film, which I got a chance to check out in theaters the other night. And in today's review, I'll be talking about my pros and my cons and let you know if it's worth checking out in theaters, but we'll also answer the question, has the narrative that the video game curse has been killed off in the last few years still stand true with this film, or does it resurrect that conversation? We'll be discussing that and much more in today's spoiler-free review, but before we get into it, let's start the conversation in the comment section. Let me know if you all were excited to see this movie, and once you've seen it, let's talk about what you liked, what you didn't like, who were your favorite characters, what were some of your favorite moments, what were some things that did not work for you all in this movie, and go ahead and share with me what is your favorite Super Mario video game in the comment section. And of course, if you all appreciate my review today, consider hitting that like button as well as sharing today's review, and consider subscribing to the channel. So let's go ahead and talk about that video game curse. So for me, I would say we've been in a good spot for the last few years, whether it be Detective Pikachu, the Sonic movies, most recently with The Last of Us. So it's been a dead conversation. The video game curse has been put aside for the moment, and I'm happy to say, at least for me, that this film makes sure that it's buried 6 feet deep, because I really had a good time with this movie. And let's just get into my positives, starting on with the production side of this film. I thought that the animation was just so vibrant, so colorful. I loved all the variant different designs and different locations we traveled to. It was so distinct and again just so beautiful to look at. And as a fan of the video games, of the Super Mario lore, I'm telling y'all, you will have an absolute blast seeking out all the Easter eggs, the references, the cameos that make their way into this film. I just feel like as a Mario fan, I just don't know how you're not going to appreciate all the attention and all the nostalgia that this film has to offer. And when it comes to the actual character designs, they were literally perfect in my opinion. And as an elite Mario Kart player myself, one of my favorite scenes and one of my favorite moments of this film is when we go to the Rainbow Bridge sequence. It was just so gorgeous to look at, and again, being an elite player, I had a good time watching that scene play out on the big screen. And transitioning over to the sound design was so incredible, as well as the actual score was so great, because of course it's hidden on the nostalgia notes that we're used to, but then there's so many different variations of the score that they have their own rendition, their own funk, their own flavor to it, that just made it so fun. It just really immerses you into the whole film. And speaking of the film, I got to talk about the directors, Aaron and Michael. They really, to me, did a good job of capturing the spirit and the essence of the video game, and I just thought they did a good job of putting the film together. So getting into the performances, I want to start off by talking about one of my favorite actresses in Hollywood. That's Anya Taylor-Joy, who voices Princess Peach in this film. I thought that she was really solid in this movie. I really enjoyed her role in the movie. I thought she was just a straight up awesome character with incredible combat skills. She was a great leader. She was protecting her toads on Mushroom Planet, and I just thought that she was a fantastic character. Which, speaking of the toads, I got to talk about my man Keegan-Michael Key, who plays Toad, who's always down for a fun adventure, and I thought that he just truly captured the fun of that character and had some of the more fun moments in the film for me. And pivoting over to Seth Rogen's Donkey Kong. Now, as far as Donkey Kong goes, I really enjoyed the character and how he played a role in this film, but when it comes to the voice of Seth Rogen, I'm a fan of Seth Rogen, and he has his infamous laugh, but I gotta say, sometimes the Seth Rogen of it all kind of overshadowed the Donkey Kong character, so that's a little bit of a criticism, but overall I did enjoy Donkey Kong and how he played a role in this film. And when we go to the Jungle Kingdom, all that stuff was fun, and it had some of the more entertaining aspects of the movie as well. But getting into some of my favorite elements, some of my favorite characters, I'm a big Charlie Day fan. I'm an OG It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia fan, so I was really looking forward to seeing him voice one of my favorite characters in the Mario world, and that is Luigi. And I'll just say this, first half of the movie, he does a really good job and has some fun moments. The third half of the movie, the third act, the final half of the film, he has his perfect moment. He has his standout moments, and we'll talk about the middle half here in a little bit. But overall, when called upon, when the spotlight was on Luigi, I thought that he rose to the occasion. But let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room, and that is the whole Chris Pratt of it all. Now, of course, we all remember that everyone lost their minds when they heard the voice of Chris Pratt in that first teaser, but I'm just going to straight up say it. I thought that he was a good Mario for me. He was a great plumber. He was a great brother. He never gave up, and the film actually does address the voice situation in the film, which I got a kick out of, so I will die on that hill. I thought that Chris Pratt Mario was a really awesome character, and I enjoyed his voice acting. So hey, hate me in the comments if you want. I really enjoyed his version of Mario, but he wasn't my favorite character of this film. That MVP award for me goes to Jack Black Bowser. No complaints from me whatsoever. He truly embodies the character perfectly. He has some of my favorite moments in the film. I won't say what the songs involve, but he has 2 singing moments that I absolutely love, and I just really thought that he stole every single scene he was in. Jack Black was awesome in this movie. So again, animation was great. The characters I had a lot of fun with, and just some other things I wanted to mention lastly. I thought the pacing was really great in the film. There's not too many boring moments or slow moments, and I do think that this is truly a quintessential film for the whole family to see. And kind of speaking to that family angle, there are some really strong themes that I think that the kids as well as adults can take away while watching this film. And while it might be a simple premise, it's still effective when you highlight things like never giving up on your dreams, and of course we've heard it a billion times to just never give up in general. So again, very simplistic themes, but things that I think everyone needs to be reminded of, especially when you're a kid and as well as when you're adult. So those are my main positives. Transition over to my criticisms. Now, I will say, even though I really had a good time with this film, it's not perfect. And to that note, to me, this isn't necessarily, all pun intended, this isn't a game changer for animation. And to that note, I do feel as though, even though it's globally well known, there are so many references and Easter eggs, and it plays into the nostalgia, but it almost plays to it to a default where I don't know if someone that doesn't like Mario or play Mario or has never seen Mario, they might be left out, because again, this film leans almost too heavily into the nostalgia, which again, I'm a Mario fan. I love that stuff, but if you're not a Mario fan, I don't know if you're really going to appreciate the film as much, because there are just so many moments of referencing to the video game lore. So getting to my other criticisms here, I mentioned Luigi was good in the first half and was excellent in the third act, but is completely missing in chunks in the movie, especially in the second half of the film, which is unfortunate because I love that character so much, and it's such an underdog character. I just have a fun time playing with Luigi, and he is sidelined for literally the second half of the film. He's like completely missing from the movie. But backtracking a little bit to the first 10 to 15 minutes of the film, that to me was probably the most childish elements, and the jokes felt very kind of influenced by Illumination, especially when we get to the scene with the dog and the plumbing moments. And I would say for me, the Earthbound stuff to me was the weakest elements of the film, but once we get to Mushroom Planet, the film just kind of takes off and goes. But again, all the Earth stuff to me was a little bit too childish and wasn't really my cup of tea, which brings me over to the pacing of the film, which I mentioned is moving really quickly. It's an hour and a half, you're in, you're out, and you're on your way. But I will say it almost moved too quick, if you know what I mean, because there are just so many moments in this film where I wish we could have slowed down the momentum. We could have spent a little more time exploring this element, exploring that plot more. So I rarely say this, but I thought that the film could have benefited for having a little bit more runtime, almost like 10 to 15 more minutes to really flesh out things, develop things a little bit more. So again, really good pacing, but almost too fast at points where I wish we could have explored more elements. But I will say, going back to kind of the jokes of it all, I didn't necessarily find it all that funny. Again, comedy is very subjective, and I wouldn't say that it leaned heavily into stereotypical kid jokes, you know, fart jokes, poop jokes, things of that nature. But I thought that they could have been a little bit more innovative with their jokes, and it could have been a little bit more creative with allowing everyone to kind of enjoy the jokes. Again, that's just me. I didn't find it to be all that funny. I did have a smile on my face because, again, I was enjoying the adventure, but the jokes didn't really land for me personally. And the last thing I want to mention, the story isn't that great. Now, it is a very basic story. It's pretty simple, but at the same time, I'm not going to make a big deal out of the story being kind of a weaker element, because the games itself, they're not super complex, they're not super complicated stories, but again, going back to I mentioned about the jokes, I wish they could have been maybe a little bit more innovative, creative, and had more depth to the actual story of the film. So those are my main pros, those are my main cons. Before I give you all my overall score, if this film was worth checking out, if you stuck around to this point in the review, I really appreciate you. Just a friendly reminder, hit the thumbs up, share, comment, and subscribe. Overall, this to me was a great celebration of the Mario's global appeal, and I went into this movie to have fun with characters I grew up with on an adventure, and I personally got that. It hit the nostalgia feels with the score and the character designs, which were phenomenal in my opinion. And I'll say this, it's far from perfect, and if you're expecting a game changer for animation, for video game fans, and you want a super detailed plot and story to be so integral, you're probably going to end up disappointed. So I would say adjust those expectations. And lastly, it hits the marks I wanted from the film, and I see this destroying the box office, and we'll get into those predictions here in a bit. But before we get into that, overall, I'm going to give this film a solid 3.5 out of 5, and I recommend you all see this with the whole family in the biggest screen and just have a good time. So before we wrap up, I will mention, and I want to bring this back to the channel because I'm a big fan of box office numbers. Let's have some fun. So I think this film will make all the money in the world, especially when you look at the competition. The next big film is next month with Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and of course we have some great movies I'm looking forward to in this month, especially with the horror fan that I am, with Beau is Afraid and Evil Dead Rise. But I think this movie domestically for the Easter holiday weekend is going to probably do globally, I say 250 million, but for that 3-day weekend or so, I see it making over 100 million domestically for its opening weekend. Share your predictions in the comments below. We'll probably bring that back with some of the bigger movies coming out later in the summer, but share yours in the comments. And lastly, there are 2 post-credit scenes. There's a mid-credit scene, and if you're a big fan of Mario, stick around to the very end because there's a very huge moment that you guys will be excited for. So hey, that's my thoughts on the movie. That's my score. Definitely go check it out. And when you do, let's talk about it in the comments below. Favorite moments, least favorite moments, favorite characters. Go ahead and share your favorite Mario video game in the comments below. Thank you all for watching today's video. Again, if you enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel by hitting this button. Check out my other reviews so far from this year. Check out my most recent review, and we'll catch you all on the next video.